Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone, and welcome to the latest, hopefully greatest edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. It can't possibly be a failure because I'm accompanied by my worthy constituent, venerable leader post Rough Rider beat writer Murray McCormick, and I'm also accompanied by my dog. So it's a podcast, P-A-W-E-D cast. Murr, this podcast already needs saving. I've destroyed it. What do you make of the Rough Riders now that we've seen them sort of in action? On Saturday when they had the green and white scrimmage, the touchdown-free green and white scrimmage.
Well, looking back, it's been a couple of days since the green and white game. I was surprised at how ineffective the offense was, really, considering this. We're all excited about this. Everyone's excited to play a game. They just didn't seem to be generating any points or other field goals in that one. It just didn't seem to be an offensive powerhouse. When trying to think back to other green and white scrimmages, which I think you noted in a column last week, that pretty well get erased from the memory banks as soon as they're done, if they're kind of that lack of offense. But they didn't seem to be having anybody even trying to go for a touchdown, which is strange. But on the other side of the coin, the defense played really well. The defense was dominant. There were pressures on the quarterbacks, even though there was no contact. You could tell there's a lot of times where the defensive line got right through, and the secondary had guys covered. So maybe on the other side of the coin, it was the defense dominated, which we always kind of say at the beginning of the season, defense has an advantage over the offense. So maybe that was at it. But I don't know, it was exciting for a while, and then it got settled into being what it was, which I guess we're always screaming for normalcy. And maybe this was an opportunity to have normalcy. Is a boring, I hate to say boring because it was still fun to be there. A scrimmage, it really wasn't all that offensive.
Yeah, it was actually charitable and humanitarian gesture by Craig Dickinson to end it a little earlier than anticipated, because it was just, they could still be playing, and there probably wouldn't be a touchdown. So it,
Yeah.
and I mean the team does have concerns on defense. Maybe the fact that they were able to exert some pressure is a positive, considering that they've got some questions along not only the defensive line but the front seven. So granted, you're doing it against yourselves, and as you noted earlier, they're doing it not with the kind of aggression and ferocity one would see in the regular season, but that's been a major concern. Can they pressure the passer, especially in the absence of Charleston Hughes? And in a pantomime game, at least they showed that there is that potential, if nothing else.
But then look what's happened to the defense since that game. They've lost Sterling Shippey with a broken foot. Tim Williams, another Achilles injury. I don't know how we can go over that one. Rob, I never thought I'd be writing about 2 Achilles injuries. Now we have 5 Achilles injuries on the Rough Riders, which is just mind-boggling. Tim Williams, the people inside, he was going to be one of our main stories this week because he has a pretty interesting backstory, but sounds like it was just a regular drill, just pushed off, and boom, there goes his Achilles, and he's down, and he's out, and he's gone for the season. And we didn't get a chance to really see. Is that you giving positive vibes? Yeah.
Oh, Candy just put her paws in the air. Look at her. She's so cute.
So
Isn't
cute.
she adorable? You're adorable too, Mur. Please continue.
Right.
Or did her paws show up in the screen? Is that how you noticed that?
That's what I said, yeah.
She was stretching. So
okay. I was talking about Tim Williams, and Tim Williams, was he going to be the guy to replace Charleston Hughes? I don't think we saw enough of him to do it. He really hadn't been around that long, but he was in the mix, and he has the NFL background and stuff. So that would have been interesting to see what he could do. But I don't know. I asked Craig, do you think they're cursed? Can we go as far as cursed, or is this as bad as 08? When how many broken legs were there in 08, Rod? I'm thinking 8?
6, 7, 8. The receiving core especially was decimated. DJ Flick, Andy Fantuz, it just kept happening.
But I think broken legs aren't, but broken legs aren't season ending or career ending. They can recover from a broken leg. I don't know when you're a 30-something guy if you can recover from an Achilles tear. And it's, as I said, it's funny. It's so many people I've talked to now since those Achilles tears have happened have torn their Achilles tears. Guys just playing basketball, guys walking upstairs, guys pedaling their bikes. That it happens in the most innocuous conditions and situations. That maybe it's just the way it is, or as Craig said yesterday, the X factor be the long break. You're just not used to doing explosive stuff, which is kind of interesting because it doesn't sound like Tim Williams is doing anything explosive. He was just pushing off with his foot and he popped his Achilles. So big creates more. You mentioned it before, the life in the trenches. Life's going to be decided in the trenches, and they got some big issues now too. We don't really know what Sterling Shippey had done. He hadn't been around a long time, but there's lots of holes on the defensive line that have got to somehow be addressed. by August 6th when the Riders play the BC Lions.
Well, there's only one really. If you look, I mean, AC Leonard's going to be one of the defensive ends, and he's good. Can he give them what Charleston Hughes gave them? He can be above average. He's proven that. But can he be inside? They've got Micah Johnson, who I think is pretty reliable, and then there's McKenna Henry and Charbel De Beer, and even Alan Chiminkinda, draftee, is looked good in training camp. It's just that one defensive end spot that is really a cause for concern. And who knows, Garrett Marino may push for some playing time inside. But as far as that one defensive end spot, Tim, as you mentioned, Tim Williams, I think arrived with the best credentials. He had 2 sacks for the Baltimore Ravens in 2018. But now it's okay. Well, is it Pete Robertson? Is it who on earth is it going to? Do they move Dion Lacey down into the defensive line? Do they go with a type of a modified 3-4? Do they let the personnel dictate the formation? Are they intractable as far as continuing with a 4-3 defense? Are there some things formation wise they can do to perhaps mitigate the effects of the loss of Charleston Hughes? There's really nobody who's, Jonathan Woodard looked pretty good in the scrimmage. He had a couple of sacks, according to our fine stats keepers, you and me. Yeah. So, but still, there's a lot of question marks there. But then again, there's a lot of question marks in the linebacking core too. And Dion Lacey is going to play somewhere, but after that,
that's what I wonder with the 3-4. You're having a hard enough time finding 3 linebackers. You want to add another linebacker in there, another middle linebacker or something? Doesn't that create more of a challenge when you have what you have going on? And it's interesting too that Elaine was practicing with the offense yesterday as a fullback. So the next Aaron Donald may want to be a fullback.
Well, he's certainly athletic enough to play a multitude of positions.
Yeah, but the only issue is he's 245, and that's pretty light as a defensive nose tackle. So I wonder if maybe you just got to I can put on weight, you can lose it. He can maybe come see us, but maybe what if he can see what he can do. But
remember once upon a time they had Katwana Jones playing nose in the Gary Echeverry 111 defense. And Katwana Jones was not a big guy, but sometimes maybe quickness can make up for a lack of bulk. But generally, you want your beefier players in the middle of the defensive line. But they may have to scheme their way out of some issues here. Maybe the ingenuity of Jason Shivers will be tested here because I'm not sure the personnel is going to be what they need, and I'm not sure they know either. We're basically a week and a half from the Rough Riders' first game in nearly 600 days, and there's still lingering questions about the linebacking core, especially when you contrast that to 2019. Solomon Elamimian, all-star. Derek Moncrief, all-star. Cameron Judge, most outstanding player in the West Division. All 3 of them are gone. They signed Larry Dean, all-star. He's no longer part of the equation. So, I mean, the hits keep on coming for the Rough Riders, and at some point they're going to have to be able to field a team without the benefit of a preseason game to get a more solid appraisal of the candidates for a number of positions. A really enviable situation, isn't it?
Craig has made a point. He thinks it's going to take a couple of games to sort everything out. So maybe we're going to see 2 regular season / preseason games getting the roster sorted out. So don't get too excited when you see lining up in game 1. Maybe it won't be there in game 2. It may not be there in game 3. So I think it's going to take some time to adjust it. And plus, they got a hit. They haven't hit yet. I know there's going to be pads today. Will be a little different, but nobody's really hit anybody yet. And I want to see what happens on the injury front when that starts happening. As the guys say, when the bullets start to fly, because we've seen a relatively healthy group coming out of the. Can we even say relative?
I wouldn't say that.
No, not
five Achilles injuries
since training camp started. But even then, there's been 2 knees.
Well, Justin McInnes is out. Tim Williams since training camp started.
Mike Edom might have a groin injury. So they're going to have to somehow get through this healthy. And today they're going to be hitting with pads for the next 2 days because they got to sort out who can play a position. So there could be more injuries coming, which is even scary. And they're not in very good shape. And I'm not sure this differentiates them from any other team in the Canadian Football League because every other team's had to deal with a protracted hiatus as well.
But Craig Dickinson has made it very clear that he doesn't like their conditioning level. That is to be expected, and he led us to believe coming into camp that there would be conditioning issues, and that if there were, perhaps some of the rookies would push the veterans. Now that we're seeing those conditioning issues, will there be some unexpected cuts later this week on account of that? Tough to say.
It is really tough. Like, unless they had him running wind sprints, which in my years on the rider beat, I've never seen that many wind sprints run before. It was interesting to see Lucius Purefoy on the first 4 was the leader. He wanted to be out there, run fast, and then he was no longer the leader. I guess he got a little winded or something. But Craig,
shouldn't they have been doing this 2 weeks earlier?
Yes, and I think Craig mentioned that he should have started this back when they opened training camp and worked on that more than trying to get into X's and O's and those type of things. So yeah, they should have been doing it a little earlier. But at the same token, you're dealing with a team that just came off 4 guys with Achilles injuries, gone for the season. Maybe being cautious was probably a natural human way to deal with things. So that might have been a little bit part of his thinking. But he did do it light for the first 2 days and then kind of open things up. But it just seems the hitting today is going to be very important. I think some of the guys are going to have to step up. I don't know who's going to step up yet. We'll see how much we can see from whatever contact. You still can't put guys to the ground. You still have to remember they're your own teammates, and you don't want to be hurting one of your own guys on the team. So
yeah, and this has already been team porcelain, so they got to be pretty careful about how aggressive they are. I mean, Keon Adams is another player who looked good early in camp and then hasn't been playing. And another player who fits that description is Jake Hardy, who had such an impressive start and has since been limping. And Taron Vaughn has just returned to practice, trying to get a handle on whether he can play with his shoulder brace. But so suddenly you wonder if that wealth of Canadian receivers, at least in one case, is being depleted. In that, who knows what's up with Jake Hardy, and you have to be concerned when you consider his history of knee injuries, and now Justin McInnes is limping, and Terrell Jana ended up playing with the first team offense as a wide receiver in Monday's practice. So there's Jana, there's Picton, there's Keon Schaefer-Baker, and there's Braden Linnaeus. So they've still got 4 for 2 starting spots, but at one point they had 6.
Yeah. So yeah, and they've all had good. Like Linnaeus has looked the best. I think Schaefer-Baker, you wrote about him, and he's.
I really like Schaefer-Baker.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Jana kind of started off strong, but it's kind of tailed down a little bit. I don't know if that's a cause. Maybe the ball's just not going his way, or he's running with the B and C group. I don't see him as often because we tend to focus on the number 1 group. But there is some one good thing. Jordan Williams-Lambert is back, looking good from that cut hand, which was pretty serious when he ran into that scoreboard. And he was having one of the best camps around, and it's good to see him back. And I think the riders are going to look forward to it. But there's Paul McRoberts, who performed pretty well in training camp.
What do you do with Paul McRoberts? Like you can't stash him on the practice roster again. And you think he's going to want to play. I think he would be the Ottawa Red Blacks' best receiver. And he might not start here. Like you've got Kyran Moore, you've got Shaq Evans, and you've got Jordan Williams-Lambert, all of whom will start, unless they look at it and think, they're probably paying Paul McRoberts a lot less than Jordan Williams-Lambert.
Yeah.
So maybe does the cap become an issue? I even look at the secondary, and I think they've got a lot of defensive backs they've really liked, and they've got 4 veterans back there, but. Ed Gainey would be making a lot more money than some of the young DBs. So if there's a veteran who's on the bubble, I would doubt it. But if they're looking to save money, and you got to remember these teams are trying to, at least by and large, are trying to spend to the cap floor. We'll see how. But they also have the latitude to spend a lot more. It's not written in stone that they have to. But if teams are really serious about spending to the cap floor, does that jeopardize some veterans roster positions, especially here? Given that the Rough Riders have some younger players who've come in and shown pretty well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's an interesting thing too is we're watching training camp. No CFL team has brought in money from gate revenue yet, eh?
Yeah.
So you look out on the field now. Everything they're doing is costing money. Yeah. And more money and more money and more money. And they maybe there's sponsorship dollars and those kind of things coming in right now, but I don't know how much that is to offset training camp. But training camp is an expensive operation. I think Craig Reynolds mentioned most of the riders' rainy day fund was going to be spent before the season started. So, this is an expensive operation, training camp. And I keep looking at wondering how they're going to get out of this and what kind of shape they're going to be when the season actually starts. When it doesn't, there's excitement for it. I like the CFL's Rise Up video. I think that's a fun thing to get behind. But do you really feel there's a whole lot of enthusiasm for the regular season open, Rob?
I think the people who are customarily enthusiastic are enthusiastic. I haven't seen, and granted, time has not been an ally, and they've had to make a lot of things go very quickly with shortened staffs. But I haven't seen anything in the way of a new way of doing things in the Canadian Football League that really is designed to create excitement. The CFL puts out a video, but they're just preaching to the choir. What have they done proactively to try and entice people to go? The first Rough Rider game is pretty much a sellout. I went and counted little red and blue dots on the Riders website or the Ticketmaster site on Monday, and there were fewer than 300 seats available for the August 6th game against BC. But then you look at August 14th against Hamilton and August 21st against Ottawa, and you could bring conventions to some of those sections and have room for plenty of delegates. So they're going to have to really preoccupy themselves with trying to do boots on the ground marketing. And I keep mentioning it, but it's true and undeniable. The Rough Riders in 2019 saw an appreciable attendance dip despite having a first place team, a supposed cash cow of a stadium, and a charismatic quarterback. And they kept brushing it off and saying, that's just the way things are in the industry. No, I think that's something they got to take seriously. And even before the pandemic, this is my rant of the week. Even before the pandemic, there should have been alarm bells sounding like Big Ben in the Riders' offices when they have a game on November 2nd, 2019. That if they win it at home, they've got first place. Doesn't happen very often, and they were 4,000 short of a sellout. If that doesn't raise alarm bells or set off alarm bells, what does? But there just seemed to be okay, well, that's just the way things are. It's a tougher crowd now. No, you've got to redouble your efforts to get people out there. Even before the pandemic, there were signs of slippage. And what have we seen here or in other centers that leads you to think that the CFL has any different way of doing business than it has before, despite the repeated declarations that there is the imperative of doing so?
I think the first game of the season, I like that one. I think the first game of the season is kind of like must-see football. You know, you've left your money with the Rough Riders first season. You want to be at that game. That's the one that people are talking about. Game 2 is just a regular football game. You know, it's back normalcy. That's maybe a normalcy and
normalcy.
Normalcy. Who do they play in game 2 anyway? I forgot to bring my schedule up.
They play Hamilton, and then they play Ottawa.
I knew it was in an East Division.
Then they play Winnipeg.
East Division games are tough sells, and even at the best of times. That's always been the kind of that way of the Riders. So I think that's one of those things that happens there. But you would think the enthusiasm of people would want to be there for game after game after game, especially when they play so many home games to kick off the summer, and then they're gone for most of the winter, so the fall, which is kind of
and that's a concern a bit. I mean, if they can't make some hay with attendance early in the year with such a front-loaded schedule, theoretically, I think people would be more comfortable going to games later in the year than earlier if there's a hesitancy about COVID. Although who knows what kind of wave we might be getting in the fall. But if there's less COVID hesitation in the fall, but there's fewer home games, does that result in a bit of an added attendance and financial challenge for the Rough Riders? The other thing I was going to ask you is 2,882 people at the scrimmage on Saturday. They could have accommodated 5,000. How much do you think we should read into the fact that they were just over 2,100 shy of an artificial capacity? I thought they'd get 5,000 for sure.
I thought I was worried about parking. How's that? I thought for sure you and I'd end up parking way over by the other side of the Brandt Center. So yeah, I had my usual parking spot. I siphoned the gas out of your car and I keyed it, and then I went up to the press box. Sorry about that. What happened to it? Yeah, because I thought I had a nearly full tank. Yeah, I was quite surprised, and I still can't figure out if it's indication. I think it's indication of people I talk to. They're not very excited about being around unvaccinated people. They really aren't. That's kind of the attitude I get from a golf with a regular season ticket holder. He didn't go to the scrimmage, and he may not go to game 1 because he says, I'm vaccinated, but I don't want to be around people who aren't. So that's their decision. That's their choice to do that. Maybe if more people got vaccinated, I somehow think, I don't know if I'd let my fact that someone's not vaccinated miss the first game at Mosaic Stadium since November 17th, 2019. Like I'm excited about that game and what it means to get back to what life is going to be like from before COVID. So maybe people start seeing that. But yeah, I'm surprised. I was surprised, and I don't know really what they do about that. This is what they had, and
There's no incentivization anymore. Yeah. They've said, fill up Mosaic Stadium, do what you want. Provinces, the restrictions are lifted. Business as usual. And there's no incentive for people to get vaccinated. There's not, except for common. You think common sense would be a really powerful incentive here, but obviously there's about 25% of the population in Saskatchewan and higher populations elsewhere that just cannot grasp the fundamental of getting a vaccine in order to greatly enhance your chances of avoiding a virus that might kill you. And you're looking at it becomes such an issue sporting wise. And we've seen what's happened in the National Football League, where the NFL has come down hard without the objection of the Players Association, saying life's going to be a lot tougher for players and coaches if you aren't vaccinated than if you are. Whereas in the CFL, there's no tiering of the system, something that ultimately contributed to Brendan Labatt's decision not to play this year. And I just wonder if the CFL is just playing with fire, because there's a lot, independently of the composition of the crowd, vaccinated as opposed to non-vaccinated, but suddenly there's going to be a significant percentage of players on the field who are not vaccinated. And you don't have big rosters, and you can't bring people in as quickly as you used to because there's the quarantines. So what happens if a team gets a COVID outbreak? And they've opened the door for it. That door is wide open. They have to cross their fingers and hope by mid-season they're not dealing with a Delta issue of their own, because the CFL is not handled as well. There should be a differentiation, and there should be some incentive for people to get vaccinated among the players, among the constituency of the players, and there's nothing there. And it just penalizes the Cody Fajardos and the Shaq Evanses, who have been quite vocal about, yes, they've been vaccinated. And they're lumped into the same group.
You can't even ask players if they've been vaccinated. We're not allowed to do that. It's pretty tough considering we have to go through Zoom to ask everything. So you can't even get an idea of how many players have been vaccinated and how many are out there without vaccinations. If I was a player, I'd like to know if my locker mate was vaccinated. I'd like to think these guys are university educated. Almost all of them. All of them should be, or at least that level, that they understand what vaccinations do and how important it is to moving forward. So yeah, I would think that I would like to see. I like what the NFL has done with the incentives to make sure you get vaccinated. This is how our league's going to survive. Same with the fans of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are saying got to be vaccinated. Good for them. And if you're a non-vaccinated person and you don't like it, tough. Get vaccinated and you can be part of the crowd. So
it's not a right to go to a game, and it's still a choice. And if you make a choice, sometimes there are consequences that are part and parcel of those choices. And so I will be really interested to see the attendances early in the season in Winnipeg compared to Saskatchewan, because those are pretty comparable markets, and in terms of size, in terms of prominence within the community. So I think the first game is pretty much a foregone conclusion as far as a virtual sellout here. So that's not, I don't think it's going to be a good barometer, but home games 2, 3, 4. I really want to see how Winnipeg stacks up to Saskatchewan. And it's scary because the NFL, everything could go wrong COVID-wise down there, and games could be forfeited, whatever. That league is no danger of forfeiting or folding. But if you look at the CFL, and if something happens here after everything the adversity they faced in 2020 and the financial pickle they were in even before that, is this league built to withstand another blow? And does COVID have another punch or two left in it?
Well, that new variant's kind of scary. That new variant is kind of scary. I'm glad I'm vaccinated. At least if I get sick, I'm just going to get sick and not have to deal with the ramifications. Let's move on to something a little more exciting.
Sorry about that.
We can always talk about quarterbacks, can't we? Let's sort of talk about quarterbacks.
Sure. Oh. Isn't she cute? She's so adorable. Now she's scratching.
Doggone cute. Doggone cute dog.
Quarterbacks, everybody's kind of in a bundle after Cody Fajardo. I didn't see anything in the scrimmage that really stood out for me. Made me think, okay, there's their number 2, there's a number 3. Somebody was going to have to overtake Isaac Harker, and I didn't see that. So I think Isaac Harker's safe for number 2. As far as number 3, Candy, who's number 3? You know as well as I do. That's a
Paxton
point.
Paxton Lynch might be the guy because of his experience, and he can step up there. Maybe he can, if he has to play. But it's a first rounder
that has to be enticing for them, thinking somebody saw a lot in this guy once upon a time, and he can really throw. Yeah, he had one pass to Paul McRoberts. He zinged it into a.
That was probably the best pass of the day.
You saw one pass by Tom Flacco toward the sideline that should have been picked off. That just the disparate arm strength of Lynch compared to the other newcomers was I think evident in the scrimmage, at least at times. And so that arm strength, that first round pedigree, the fact that he has learned in an NFL system, the fact that he's 6'7", 240 and can move, to me, it would be pretty tough for the Rough Riders, I think, to not keep Paxton Lynch if they're convinced that he is serious about this. And after 2 or 3 weeks, he's not going to say, I'm sick of making CFL minimum. I'm going back home to my very nice home in Denver.
That's the question I have. He always has money in the bank. This would be more of an opportunity just to maybe get back to the NFL and show what he can do, because that's what he wants to do, which isn't a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. But, Mason Fine has also been out there. I forgot to mention him, and he didn't do much to really sort of stand out either, in my mind either. So I don't know, like, even Fajardo was okay. We're not running off saying that there were a couple of questions, but he's only out there for maybe 9 plays, I think, 9 or 10 plays.
Yeah, but in 2019, Derek Taylor kept stats in 2019 at the scrimmage in Saskatoon. And Zach Claros went 1 for 10. And 5 or 6 months later, he was a Grey Cup winning quarterback, albeit for a different team. But
I guess once again, the green and white scrimmage was one of those things that comes and goes. It's exciting building up to it, and when it passes on, you move. Just like training camp. Training camp will move on. We'll get down to smaller numbers on Friday, like less than 100 guys, and you'll find a big difference watching. There's less people out there, and there's more of a focus and those kind of things. And then the season's here, and man, about time, I think.
Yeah, it's a shorter season, but a longer training camp than usual, and no cuts, and so it really no preseason games. So you end up just kind of recycling the bathwater a lot. Running backs, William Powell. I get the feeling from watching the Riders scrimmaging or practicing that they're going to use William Powell a lot more downfield as a receiver this year than they did in the past. They've put him in some slot positions every now and then, and he's a good receiver. I think he can give them a lot. As far as number 2, I really like Marcus Murphy. Showed nice quickness in the scrimmage. The one nice running play that the Rough Riders did have was Marcus Murphy gaining 8 yards. Jamal Morrow didn't do that much, and Ralph Webb didn't do that much. But it's again tough to base it on a scrimmage. I think if it comes down to the fact that the backup running back is also going to be the return specialist, then you can look at that a couple of ways too, and that Jamal Morrow has a year of experience on the Riders practice roster, and they like him, and he's younger than Marcus Murphy, who's almost 30. But Marcus Murphy once upon a time returned a punt for a touchdown for the New Orleans Saints. And Jamal Morrow returned kicks and punts in college, but not exceptionally well. His average in college was on kickoff returns was less than 20, and his average on punt returns was 9. Well, those look like the Rough Riders kick return averages in 2019.
Yeah, they're nothing spectacular.
Marcus Murphy, I think, is more of a built-in candidate for a designated returner role. But I wonder if Jamal Morrow's incumbency might balance out that equation. That's a really interesting battle to watch.
One of them might be on the practice roster, again, just to see what they can do for a little while, put them down there.
And it's a bigger practice roster.
It's 13 players on the practice roster. And they also have this taxi squad, 5-player taxi squad, which gives them some flexibility in case a guy gets COVID and that kind of stuff. But you also have to remember all these guys can be plucked from each team. I think the taxi squad, any team can take guys from there to fill out their roster to avoid the quarantine period. That's another thing. What happens now, that people say, why haven't they made a trade for somebody to be a defensive end? Why haven't they made, because the trades, you got to bring him in. It's 2 weeks before he's even on the field for you. And that's halfway. Yeah. So it really isn't something that they can really even sort of ponder right now, because basically these are the guys they're going with, regardless of who they cut. This is the roster. Some of all these guys on the field today, they're all going to be in the field Monday. They're going to be around on Monday when they open up. So they got to go with what they got. So they can't really bring anybody in.
We addressed the receiving corps pretty much in depth earlier. We're writing about receivers as we record this on a Tuesday. Murray's got a story on Jordan Williams-Lambert, and I've got a piece on Kyran Moore, and Shaq Evans is very good. So I think the receiving corps is going to be fine. The key is, can you protect the quarterbacks to a degree that will allow the receivers to get the ball? And that offensive line, a lot will depend upon how Taron Vaughn can handle his shoulder injury. Can he play with it? If so, then Cameron Jefferson would seem to be the most likely candidate to play right tackle. The
Well,
guards.
Taron Vaughn was at right tackle yesterday, which
Is
is
he at right
maybe
tackle? Interesting. Maybe just trying to alleviate a bit of the pressure.
it's his right shoulder. I think I saw the brace on. So maybe that's trying. I don't know, but that wouldn't make sense, I guess. But it looked like it may be different today. Maybe just getting him warmed up in there. So there is some depth problems on that. Maybe someone joked when Brendan Labatt decided to opt out of the season, when would the Riders be calling him to come in and help him out? But Evan Johnson's been gone because he just became a new dad, and nice on Craig to do that. That's interesting timing to have your baby in training camp, but who knows what's going to happen this season.
The way players are getting injured, I don't think missing training camp workouts is a bad thing.
No, that's kind of what.
But they've got Evan Johnson penciled in or penned in at a guard spot, and if they don't, so you've got Dan Clark playing center, obviously, so that's taken care of, and so that leaves one spot that's aside from the tackles, there's one spot that's a bit of a mystery, but they
right guard spot. You think right guard is that mystery, like what Brett Boyko can do in there?
Well, are they going to play Boyko right guard or left guard? If Boyko
we'll see when Evan Johnson gets back.
Boyko's got good credentials, but has not yet proven that he can be a game in, game out guy in the league. If he can, that takes care of some of the issues there. There's Josiah St. John who can back up. Logan Furland has had a good camp. Matlin Riley is likely to be part of the equation somewhere. So they've got some depth there, but it's being tested this spring. Defensive line, we've addressed that. Linebackers. Who are some of the candidates at linebacker? Where we haven't really delved into that.
When Craig Dickinson says he doesn't know,
yeah. I think you're one of the brightest minds in this podcast.
Yeah,
you're right up there with Candy, so you should be able to help us out here.
I'm thinking I really liked DeMarcus Gates. I think
he's really come on, hasn't
he? They play all over on linebackers. I wish I could say he's the Sam, he's the Will, or the Mac, but they're moving him everywhere on the field, and I think they're just trying to find a guy, kind of like throwing when you cook spaghetti, you throw it at the wall to see if it sticks. I kind of like Gary Johnson Jr. stood out for me during the green and white game. He's a guy who's had some experience. He could be a good Will, I think, looking at that size.
That'd be a good Will gesture, wouldn't it? Sorry. AJ Hendy's look good.
Yeah, Nigel Harris is another guy who looked good. And we haven't even mentioned the Herdman Reed brothers.
Yeah.
And I keep watching them and seeing how much they get used. And they don't seem to get utilized a lot. I think maybe they're going to be really big contributors on special teams, in which you and I both know the Riders special teams, maybe not at punter and place kicker right now, but have issues in coverage, and you need some really good coverage guys, and the Herdman brothers can maybe fill out that coverage position with a Dion Lacey. So those are some names. And don't forget Micah Tights. He played one game last year, didn't totally look out of place, and I think maybe they can get him as a Canadian Will, but those are some of the names to throw out there. Kevin Francis, too, another guy who we haven't really said that much and seen that much of out there. So I keep looking away because I look at my roster, folks.
There's Godfrey Onyeka, too.
Yeah. But, and AJ, I know you mentioned Hendy. Hendy has looked good, too. He's come up and made some big plays. So, we'll see when they go out today when the live bullets are flying, supposedly, and see what happens with kind of figuring out the linebackers. I said, it's funny. And I don't think Craig is hiding it from us. I really don't think they know. Craig's always candid with us, and I think he's telling us, we don't know yet. We're going to sort it all out.
You watch practice and you just look at linebackers in and out at Sam and Will and Mac or Mike or Marcus or Murray or whatever the M stands for.
That's why they call it practice, Rob.
And it's
not
just,
a game.
It's really a revolving door. Less so in the secondary. How's that for a smooth segue? Barring the unexpected, the halfbacks will be Lucius Purifoy and Ed Gainey. Purifoy has had I think as good a camp as anybody. Yep. The safety, if he's healthy, will be Mike Edam. What if he isn't?
Well, there's Jacob Dearborn. He's kind of seems to one. And I would have thrown, what an opportunity it would have been for Nelson Lacombo. Unfortunately, but I think Jake, that's a real question. I have to watch that today because I don't know who would be. Craig said soft tissue issues for him. And he's been a pretty healthy guy for most of his career. So I'm not totally worried about Mike not coming back, but that is a question mark hanging over the team. And I think they really want to go with a Canadian in that position. That's kind of one of those positions you have to play Canadian.
It's ratio chaos if they don't.
Yeah. And the cornerbacks, we got Nick Marshall, who's looked fine. He hasn't. Yeah. I haven't really noticed him much, which that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Just you don't watch the guys like that. I don't watch Purifoy because I know he's going to be on the team.
Yeah, when you look at it, I mean, they've about 3/4 of the team is decided. If you look at the starting positions, and barring further injuries, they've got about 18 of the 24 starters determined. Now there's a lot of uncertainty as far as those remaining 6, and there's not front runners emerging in some of those cases. And I wonder if an ability to play special teams might be the tipping point in some of those instances. And if you're looking at the final roster, and as you mentioned, they had coverage issues in 2019 because they had issues with our coverage. Bad joke. And 5 return touchdowns with a head coach whose forte is special teams. I'm sure that didn't agree with Craig Dickinson. They've got to upgrade the return game somehow. And they've got to upgrade the coverage. And Brett Lowther's got to kick at higher than 78%, which I think he will. Yeah. And John Ryan's leg still looks electric.
So he was booming
them in the scrimmage.
Or he almost have sometimes I was getting as high as the stadium. Some of his punts, and
maybe that'll was a moonshot.
That'll do so much for the coverage teams if he works on if his net average picks up and the guys get down there in the field to cover. So that's a big one.
I was mad at myself because usually when I'm at the games, I do the hang time, and I was in scrimmage mode, and it didn't occur to me to do hang time. And after John skied that first one, I thought you could have,
you and I could have covered that.
Could have gone to the concession during that punt and got back in time to see it be fielded. So John Ryan's right leg is 39 going on 25.
Oh, yeah. And he's so fit. It's incredibly fit for a punter. And you look at the modern day punters now, you watch college kids, they're all like that. It's not the guys that kind of trot out and they're all athletes first and incredible punters second. So that's the way the game has changed. What are you thinking with the Jason Maas offense? Have you seen enough to make to warrant an opinion?
Well, a no touchdown scrimmage doesn't exactly engender confidence. Yeah. But I think they're going to be fine there. I think once they get down to using the people they want to use in the situations that they want to use them in, and also are cognizant of the fact that they're no longer hiding anything, and they can use the full playbook instead of just basically the nuts and bolts plays. That'll be interesting, and we're going to see, especially as players have more time to get accustomed to the offense too, with all its possibilities. They're still installing that offense, and you can be a boundary receiver the next play, and one play, and a slot back the next play, or running a fly sweep or a jet sweep or whatever. So there's so many, I think, possibilities. Look at her. Hi, Candy. There's so many possibilities that. There's so many possibilities that I think now she's yawning. Was that something I said? That I think we really won't know until the first game. But you look at some of the 2019 statistics as a marker, and Stephen McAdoo's offense statistically was in some cases superior to that which was choreographed by Jason Maas. So it's not a. I think Maas has the bigger name and certainly the better resume. But if you look at offensive productivity, it's pretty much a wash if you look at the 2019 Edmonton Elks versus the 2019 Roughriders. And so, and you got to remember but you got to remember that Trevor Harris was absent for 5 regular season games, so that skewed their statistics a bit with Logan Kilgore as playing quarterback. But still, I think they'll make a lot better use of the weapons that they have. I think Kyran Moore is going to have an absolutely crazy year. Aren't you cute? Because I wouldn't be surprised to see him get 1,000 yards in 14 games this year, because I think that's the player I look at, and I think Jason Maas, looking at Kyran Moore and all the things they can do with him on that expansive field, is just going to be like a Madden player with a controller. That could be fun to watch.
I just like to tell people, let's get off the Jason Maas fiery rant stuff. He's not going to be like that as an offensive coordinator. I know he was, and it was fun to watch on the side, but he was in charge of a whole lot of stuff. And he would blow up every now and again, which is, that happens. The offensive coordinator is going to be up in the box. Maybe he can blow up there all he wants, but the focus is going to be on Craig Adams.
Is he a sideline coach or a box coach?
I think he was in the box.
I seem to recall he was sideline coach, but I couldn't. It seems like 48 years ago since we last watched a CFL
Yeah, I
game.
know. So I can't. Yeah, it's a good. I'm assuming he'll be in the box. Even then, even on the sideline, he's not. He's not going to be one blowing up. It's Craig making the final.
It's not his
decisions.
job to blow up at the officials anymore.
So he's just going to be fine. I think that, and he's out of many. He's not. I don't think he gets fired in games, but he's not really that type of guy. I think I've always liked talking to Jason. And I think that he's going to be a little less fiery and a little more focused on what's happening on the field.
I think what we might see too, Mur, is the fact that Jason Maas is also a quarterback of considerable, or was a quarterback of considerable repute. How much does that help the development of not only Cody Fajardo, but the four younger quarterbacks beneath him on the roster? I think his understanding of the quarterback position could also, and his empathy for what the quarterbacks must go through, might be beneficial there too. I don't think Stephen McAdoo did a bad job in 2019. Not until the West Final.
Yeah, the West Final. But I think Stephen McAdoo right now is saying, "Hey guys, I can still coach offensive, be an offensive without having played quarterback." Like there's probably as many offensive coordinators who didn't play quarterback as the ones that have played quarterback. So I think that's something you just have to do. You got to be able to do it. And yeah, Mac. Other than that, so we were talking about the West Final the other day in the press box. Kind of all the other little things have kind of been sort of swept under the rug because we've been away for so long. But there are a lot of questionable calls at the end of that game, including the non-usage of William Powell. That still has everyone scratching their head over what's going on. Regardless of Cody hitting the goalpost, I don't think he should have been in that position if they'd even utilized William Powell to his abilities and just let the guy run. Well, that's looking back, but
or if they get one block on a trick play on a punt return.
Exactly.
The fickle nature of football. As we record this, it's 11:35 a.m. and the Rough Riders are to begin practice at noon. And Murray and I are both very old, so we have to takes a while to assemble ourselves to get to where we're going. So, anything to add, Murray?
Nothing. I think too. There's Friday's a big day, cut down day. We finally get to see what your 2020 Rough Riders are going to look like, kind of heading into the weekend. Because in the old days it could be moves to decide on the roster and then make changes. But I think once the roster's set, it's pretty well going to be set due to COVID. So it'll be interesting to see. I know that's what my thought. Friday's a big day, another big day in the big days, and then we're a week away from the regular season opener against the BC Lions. Finally.
Can hardly wait. So it's going to be interesting doing the podcast a week from now. We do have a special guest lined up, and I will reveal the identity of that person in due course. But I think that'll be worth watching. The special guest will supplant Candy next week, I'm thinking. We've got the little explainer at the end that I always keep meaning to read. Mur, do you have that at your fingertips? Have I screwed this up again? Sorry, this is must viewing material, I realize, but I've been instructed by Mark Melnichuk, our producer, to read this. I've got it here. And I don't understand some of these terms because I'm 114 years old. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. Out of 5, please, not out of 100. It helps us grow the podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Where do you get your podcasts, Mur? I get it by pressing that icon on my phone. If you'd like to send us a question, you can email Rob at rvanstone@postmedia.com, and we'll read your question or comment on the air. You can follow me at Rob Vanstone on Twitter, or Murray at MurrayLP. I thought the elocution there was tremendous.
Well done, Rob. You got a real future in podcasting.
Great. Well, hopefully we have at least another week in the future anyway. So for Murray McCormick, thanks again, Murray, for all your time. And thank you to everybody out there in podcast land for spending time with Murray, myself, and my wonderful dog, Candy. Take care.
I'm going to have to bring my cats into the next one. Well, no, after the special guest, of course.
Yeah, let's get the cat going for. We've let the cat out of the bag now about a future special guest, but we'll have a feel. The football feline will soon debut. For Murray, for me, and for Candy, take care and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.